Hello, welcome back to CinemaBurger. I'm Scott Berger and I bring you movie reviews from a different perspective. Today we continue our viewer choice movies with the number 3 choice for horror, which is Sinister. Now, Sinister came out in 2012. It was directed by Scott Derrickson and written by C. Robert Cargill, who was originally a reviewer for the website Spill.com. Now, what's interesting is that him and Scott Derrickson wrote the movie, but Cargill got the idea for the movie while having a nightmare after he had seen the movie The Ring. And they would go on to direct and write Sinister 2 and Doctor Strange. The star of the movie is Ethan Hawke. He's a writer for true crime novels. He looks up unsolved cases and tries to find out the answers. The kids never actually know what the dad is writing about just because they're too young, and the wife knows but doesn't really ask. So, when moving into the house, Ethan Hawke finds a bunch of 8mm tapes up in the attic that say home movies. Now, this is where the creepy stuff begins. What's good about Sinister is that it gets into the plot right away. There's no filler or scenes of humdrum life. When Ethan Hawke starts watching the home movies, they show family enjoying outdoor activities and things like that, and then it cuts to the families being gruesomely murdered in different ways. There's about 4 or 5 different family tapes. One of them features a family who's hung, one a family who's drowned, another family locked in a trunk and stuff like that. It's pretty disturbing. Now, to say this is a found footage movie would be incorrect because while technically he has found footage, it's not all filmed from that first person perspective. So it's just a guy watching home movies and trying to discover what's going on. Now, when he gets to the town where the house is, the local police chief stops him because he knows who he is and that he's made trouble for the cops and stuff in other towns by looking up these cases. And he basically says that the police won't help him. Now, there's a young deputy played by James Ransome who is starred in the It movies as adult Eddie. Now, as Ethan Hawke watches these home movies, he continues to drink more. While it doesn't really affect him throughout the movie, I thought it was just interesting that he needs to drink to watch these home movies because there are gruesome events happening in them. But it doesn't make him an alcoholic or anything like that. He's still pretty level-headed as the movie goes on. So I wasn't expecting that to happen. Now, even though these families are getting murdered, they're still being filmed, so he's trying to figure out who is actually filming and stuff like that. Now, that deputy helps him find out information about all the families who have been murdered, and it turns out also that one of the children in each family has gone missing after the rest of the family was murdered and were never found. So there is a good mystery element to this movie as well. Now, even though both of Ethan Hawke's children don't really know what he does for a living besides being a writer, they have odd, like, night tendencies or coping mechanisms once they kind of find out, because they do. The son has night terrors and is a sleepwalker. At one point, after watching a bunch of the movies, Ethan Hawke walks into a hallway and the son pops out of a cardboard box because he was sleepwalking and ended up in a box. So that's a little tense, that scene, because the son yells and it startles Ethan Hawke. But to first see him pop out of a box is pretty funny, even though it's not supposed to be. But you just see like a little kid pop out of a box. It's pretty damn funny, I'm not gonna lie. Now, what's interesting is in one of the films, after a family has been drowned, there's a weird image in a swimming pool. It looks like some sort of face. It kind of looks like a pumpkin that's white but has long hair. And to be honest, it looks like Tommy Wiseau from The Room. because he has like long black hair and he wears sunglasses a lot. So maybe Tommy Wiseau is there trying to film The Room Part 2. I don't know. And when Ethan pauses on that image, the film actually starts burning, which is never a good sign. Burning things in horror movies are always bad. So some supernatural things or odd things do happen in the house while Ethan and his family live there, but nothing like super crazy. It's lights go out or you hear noises. At one point, something moves on the floor and there's a snake somehow, but it could have just crawled in there because of where they live. Now, that's believable, but still creepy at the same time. Now, the police deputy gets back to Ethan Hawke and finds drawings from the children of the families that were murdered, and there's drawings of the family being murdered, and then there's someone named Mr. Boogie drawn next to him, and it looks similar to the figure in the pool that Ethan found earlier. Now, as more strange things start to happen, he gets pulled down a ladder one time, and he sees these weird symbols on family videos and drawings. He contacts an expert, and it's played by Vincent D'Onofrio, and he gets back to Ethan and says that the images and figure is an ancient pagan god called Bagul, and he's an eater of children, and that he summons children to their realm. So that's the demon that's been haunting these videos and stuff. Now, another interesting fact is that the deputy tells Ethan that each family that was killed lived in the house that the previous family was killed in. So it's like a chain of events, and it's leading back to like the 50s and stuff, and that the family that was killed was living in the house that Ethan Hawke was living in, but we knew that part. But all the previous families in the home movies were living in the houses of the previous families. So also, Ethan Hawke starts to see dead children running around. Now, whenever we see these dead children, they don't say anything. They just kind of walk around, and Ethan Hawke's own kids can see them. Now, the daughter likes to paint, so she started painting the things she's seen from the home movies and the drawings, which is really bad. Demonic children are always a problem. So Ethan starts to see Bagul in real life, and he tries to destroy the films, but they actually come back the next day. He tries setting them on fire because Vincent D'Onofrio tells him that there's not a lot of information on Bagul because all of the information was pretty much destroyed so that he couldn't raise terror again or come into this world. We find out that the missing kids actually murdered the families under Bagul's control, and the daughter has been acting a little weird. So after trying to destroy the tapes and trying to figure out what's going on, he finally learns everything, and while drinking something while watching the films again, there's some weird green liquid at the bottom of the cup and he passes out. So the daughter drugged him and is now getting ready to kill Ethan Hawke, so to sacrifice him to Bagul. Now after that happens, we see the footage of all the kids murdering their families and stuff, and then they all turn around and go shh, because Ethan Hawke's been trying to edit the film onto digital so we can actually zoom in and see what's going on and get closer looks at things. So the daughter actually says, "Thank you for making the film easier to look at and longer." So after the daughter kills Ethan Hawke, we see all the other kids along with Bagul in the 8mm film, and the daughter walks into the film. And then we cut to the box of 8mm films and we see a new edition, and it's Ethan Hawke's family in the current year, 2012. So now he has been added to the haunted tapes, so to say, and the next unsuspecting family can find him. and then the movie ends. Now, in general, I can't really find any faults with this movie. It's well written, it's padded out well, there's no unnecessary footage or plot points, I would say. Now, another thing is that the writer and director went on to do Doctor Strange, and there's a sequel, Sinister 2, that stars the police deputy. The only thing I can think of that's really not great about this movie is that after you watch it, it's fine, but it's not super memorable, I would say. Like, I haven't thought about this movie in like 5 years, and while it's good while you're enjoying it, it doesn't stick out in your mind afterwards. But there's really nothing wrong with it. But the sequel is pretty good as well, and the writer and director team are pretty talented. Now, it's interesting that Vincent D'Onofrio is the expert on occult and demons, because in the movie Rings, he plays an expert on the ring phenomenon and the little girl in the well. So that would be a niche role for him later on. Now, I'll give Sinister 4 out of 5 burgers just because it's not memorable after watching it for a while, but while you're watching it, it's enjoyable and gruesome and intense. And like, an unintentionally funny moment was the son popping out of the box screaming. But yeah, it's a pretty solid movie while you're watching it. It's just, you may not remember it in a few years. So I've been Scott Berger, and I'll see you next time.